not sure that I heard. Did you mention Andre?
Yes, I said Andre.
Oh, okay.
Andre is fourth. Grethel, right. Carleen, Susan, Andre, Mary, Beverly, Pastor Hemmings.
Yes, yes. Sorry.
All right, great. You make me sound like, say me.
We're now live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome this evening to this JDTAN Behavioral Task Force Forum. It's a behavioral forum, and I want to say happy Earth Day today. I know many of you have gone out and planted your trees and planted your seeds inside of your little pans, and you're expecting it to grow. And who didn't plant went out today and picked up some trash in the yard, or put away, put the trash in one bin or your plastics in another bin and so forth. It's Earth Day, so the whole idea is to become more aware of your surroundings and your environment. Good day, everybody. So I would like to first allow the person who is leading this event, her name is Dr. Beverly Gordon, a few minutes to speak on this topic, but I want to welcome everybody on Facebook, on Jamaicans.com, everyone who's here on Zoom, on the Zoom meeting. Thank you so much for joining. We have a great lineup for you this evening, and we have several presenters. The first presenter will be Dr. Grethel Bradford. She will be speaking on parent-child relationships. We have Carleen Tomlinson, who will be speaking on self-care for parents. We have Susan Hamilton, who will be speaking on psychological needs and resources for children with disabilities. We have Andre Witter. He will be speaking on understanding the psychological needs of the deaf community. Mary McLaughlin will be speaking on the psychological and practical benefits of backyard gardening. Dr. Beverly Gordon will be speaking on anger management and conflict resolutions. And then Pastor Hemming will close, will be the last presenter, and he will be bringing the spiritual perspectives and practices. Welcome everyone, whether you're on Jamaicans.com or you're on Jamaicans.com on Facebook or on Zoom this evening. Welcome everyone. I'll allow Dr. Beverly Gordon to speak for a couple of minutes. Dr. Beverly?
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy that you were able to join us this evening. This presentation is being brought to you by the Behavioral Health Task Force, and we hope that whatever is presented this afternoon will be useful information, and that you will also have an opportunity to talk back to us in the Q&A after the presentations. So thank you again for joining us.
If you're on Facebook, feel free to go ahead and ask your question or make a comment, and we will attempt to bring it here for the panelists to respond to you. Okay, are we ready? The exam is about to start. Okay, so the first person, let's go with Dr. Grethel Bradford. Dr. Grethel Bradford.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And I will be talking about, for a few minutes, something that is very, very dear to my heart. It's relationships. And it's relationships within the context of COVID-19. How do we look at the relationships now that have shifted, that have changed somewhat, because people are now in very, very close quarters? And so for me, it means that a lot of parents will have to find innovative ways to relate to their children, to understand what is happening with their children. And I just wanted to start off with a few pointers in terms of, what is going on and what will impact the relationship. I don't think that I have to tell any parent exactly what it has been like for the last month or so, being thrown into a situation where you do not know exactly how you're going to manage from day to day. And when we come and we talk about relationships, I want you to think of it in terms of your children and yourself might never have seen anything like this before. And 50 years from now, 60 years from now, your children will be remembering what happened. They will also remember the relationship that they had with those who were very close to them, those who were in very close quarters with them. And so I think just looking at the relationships between parents and children is pretty important. I want to start off by just making 5 points, and then I hope that as we go into the Q&A, you can ask me any question regarding strategies on how to work with children. First of all, I want to say that contact does not mean connection. So just because the parents and the children and the grandparents, aunts and uncles, everyone who live in the same house might be in contact, close contact with each other, it doesn't mean that they have connections. What do I mean by that? If they weren't talking to each other before, they weren't communicating well with each other before, there may be that sense of a lack of connection. That's very, very important for us to remember, because along with connection comes communication. And the way we communicate now during this time may be indicative or may be in fact a little more complicated than the way we communicated before and the way we will communicate afterwards. So we want to look at that. How do we communicate? Do we communicate by yelling at each other? Do we communicate by going silent and sort of like separating ourselves from each other? How do we let those who are around us understand what we are feeling? In relationships, that is key. The second thing I want to emphasize is that people are in close quarters. And when we are in close quarters, we are going to feel, we're going to intuit, we're going to sense what the others around us are feeling and thinking, and it's going to impact us in certain ways. Another thing I want to sort of draw to your attention is parenting styles. What are the parenting styles? We have 3 types of parents. We have the authoritarian parent, that parent who says, you do what I say when I say it, how I say it, and I don't care what you say. And they don't balance that with love or demonstratable love. And that's one kind of parenting. The next type of parenting we have is the authoritative parent. That is the parent who balances the discipline and the order with love. So there is order and there is love. And so when you discipline the child understands that you love them, and the discipline is just to keep them in line. Then you have the permissive parent. This is a parent that just allows the child to do whatever he wants to do, to go wherever he wants to go. And this is significant, especially when we are working with children who are in their teens. If a child is used to just going wherever he wants to go and say what he wants to say, do what he wants to do, he is not going to understand the rules that are set out by the government in terms of staying at home. And if parents don't allow them, have not been holding their children tightly in terms of rules, the kids are not going to understand that. Forgive me if I say kids, children. The next thing I want to talk about is the personality. What is your personality? What is a parent's personality? What is a child's personality? Is the child outgoing? Is the parent introverted? How does the parent demonstrate who they are? Because that again is going to impact how they relate to their children. The fourth thing I want to talk about is, and this is at the heart of what I want to say, we are living in a stressful situation, and there is stress all around. And very often as adults, we like to think that our feelings are bigger and stronger than our children's feelings. And I want to say that Leo is 6'4", I think, and his anger might be as big as he is. But a 4'6" child's anger is going to be as big as his anger is. And that goes for things like worrying, it goes for things like anxiety, feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. Those kind of sound like what the parents may be feeling. And so we might say our children are not feeling this as well. So parents need to understand this, that their children are feeling the same things that they are feeling. It's no smaller than they are. It's no less for them than it is for the parents. But here is what happens. When the parents feel a particular emotion, they have the ability, most of the time now, to be able to control it. And they might move into certain behaviors where they seek to get control and where they try to provide responses and answers to whatever the problems are. Children are going to do it differently. We are going to see them exhibiting behaviors that are disruptive. They might throw tantrums. They may become non-compliant, just literally disobedient. And so you take all of those things together. People are pushed together. They may not have been communicating, in a cordial kind of way before the COVID virus, and now they have to do all of this. So I want to say, what do you do then within the context of this? We have to sort of change the lenses that we are looking at our relationships through. We have to be able to say, okay, what can we do? What are some strategies that we can use? And I think, Leo, if I'm not wrong, I might be out of time. I will come back willing to answer questions based on what I have said before.
I do think that if you have a couple of minutes you can spare, you could go on.
I can go ahead.
Go ahead, yes.
Okay, so what does it mean then? We all know that children, for example, they don't get certain things. And so we have to learn, first of all, to explain things to them. That's the first thing we need to do. And, I thought about it today, and, the children are listening to the radio. They're in the yard where all the adults are sitting around. They're in the house, they're listening to the children who are, they're listening to the adults and who are sort of discussing what is going on, and they are confused. So what does that mean? It means that we have to find ways to protect our children. That's the first thing. We have to protect them from the outside stuff. It's not that it's not going to filter in, but we as parents can determine how that information is filtered into our children. The second thing I want to say is that parents, try to be slower in terms of your actions. Children are naturally impulsive, And this has a lot to do with how their brains are growing. They're going to be different levels of the way they think about problems, the way they solve problems. And so we are going to have to think, okay, we have to protect them. We have to be slower to respond to them. We have to talk to our children and not at our children. We need to give them enough space to be children. So when they're rambunctious and they're crying and they're asking all these questions, because our brains are more developed, it is important for us to be able to step back and to be able to relate to them, to be prepared to answer their questions. And if you can't find the answers to the questions, make it a fun thing. And I hope that I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that. But I really think it's just being very deliberate in how we speak to our children, be deliberate in how we display our angers and our emotions. And one very, very important thing that I want parents to remember and to bear in mind, that we exude our emotions. Our children pick up when we are anxious. They pick up when we feel helpless and hopeless. They are like little, I want to say, sponges. And they might not have the words to say what they are feeling, what they're thinking. So we have to then create an avenue. Even if we had not learned it before, we're going to have to learn it now, because we want our children, when they talk about this experience, to say that I was able to talk to my parents through this. I was able to understand it at my level. And now I can tell my children and my grandchildren of what this pandemic meant for me.
All right. Oh my God. Thank you so much. That's really great information. I heard you spoke of contact and connection being different. That connection includes communication and making sure that you connect with the kids, not just to be in the same space, but being able to create a relationship through communication and others. You ought to talk about we are all in close quarters now. It's everybody is in the same space. We can't just go outside as we want to, but now we have to build relationships being in the same space and being close together. Parenting styles, you spoke about parenting styles, about whether a parent is strict or loose or just being able to manage the role of the parent at that time, and how best to manage a kid to protect them at the same time. You spoke about the personalities that's in the household. You spoke about stress, that being a very important thing, that when stress is not different when it comes to an adult versus a child. You have the same level of stress, no matter if you're tall or you're small, right? And then you want them also to be slow and slow with the kids, being able to be compassionate, being able to understand their level of understanding and so forth, right? Thank you so much. I hope I did that well. Let's have now Miss Carleen Tomlinson. She's going to speak regarding parent and child. Did I say that right?
Self-care.
Yes. Self-care. Self-care for parent. Yes. Thank you so much, Carleen.
I'm going to try to share my screen. Can I do that?
Yes, sure do.
Share. Okay. So yes, hi everybody, good night. My name is Carleen and I am here to talk about self-care for parents. Right now we're quarantined and isolated, and we are basically socially distanced from our community resources. So in essence, as a parent, you are the village. You are the teacher, the butcher, the candlestick maker, your chef extraordinaire. Now we have to make 3 meals and we have to try to make it exciting and different, and we have to use the resources that we have. And your cruise director, you're trying to make sure you have activities for the kids, and your referee. And, if you are also in a relationship, you are also a loving and supportive partner. So you're giving and giving and pouring and pouring. And we need to understand that you can't pour from an empty cup. And we need to make sure, as they tell us, you know, in emergency situations, they say, put on your oxygen mask first before you help somebody else. We have to make sure that we're filling ourselves and we're filling our cup so that we can pour into others. And that's basically what self-care is filling ourselves up. It's not selfish, it's essential, because as a parent in this family, you are the MVP, you are the essential player in the family. So what does it look like? What do we do for self-care? We're going to start with a self-check, just like you go and you check your car. And while we're doing this in the context, as Ratel said, that this is a momentous time, or a momentous phase in our lives. And I mean, it's possible that a couple months from now, years from now, people will be diagnosed with, I wouldn't be surprised, we might have post-pandemic stress disorders. I mean, this is a heavy, heavy time. So we need to give ourselves grace as we're going through this process. We're going to evaluate ourselves, and we're going to first say, okay, where am I at? Spiritually, do I feel connected with God? Do I feel, or the universe or source, whatever you know you believe in? Do you feel, where are you at emotionally and mentally? Is your temper flaring? Do you feel joyous? Do you feel anxious? Are you having negative thoughts going through? Where are you at physically? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? Are you eating too much? Are you moving? And once you do the assessment, that's just where you are. So that's your starting point. And then you think of where you'd like to be and what are some steps that you can take to get to where you want to be. Or maybe there's some things that you need to stop doing. Maybe you need to stop drinking so much because then it makes you, you know, more prone to anger. Or maybe you need to spend more time with your devotion so you can commune more, feel more spiritually connected. And when you do this assessment, just congratulate yourself for where you are, because right now it's a difficult time. So wherever you're at is where you're meant to be, and we need to give ourselves that grace for where we are. And what are some steps that we can take, some practical steps that we can take as we're going through this challenge, because this challenge is going to change us. We're going to be changed. And the steps that we take now, those steps are going to dictate what that change will look like. So let's take a look at some practical steps. And first thing we're going to do is to find stillness or silence. That's the first thing. Some point in the day we find stillness. My grandmother used to say, and I don't know, you guys I'm sure are familiar, when my granny would say, be quiet, make my ears nyam grass. Right? I don't know why ears needed to eat grass. And if somebody knows, please put it in the comments. I would love to know the derivation. But the point is, we need that stillness and that quietness so we can go inward and find out what is it that I need, or what is the lesson that I need to be getting out of this. So I know that there are also some of us have small spaces. So if you can't find that place to go for that quiet or that stillness, go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom, close the door, sit on the throne, or even sit in the tub. That's a nice little cocoon. Hopefully it's dry, can be very cool. Sit in the tub and just take some time for yourself. It's even 5 minutes. Just take that time, that quiet time, and you're gonna start with gratitude. Oprah pressed it for years. Before her, the Bible talk about in all things, give thanks. So we start with gratitude, and it's the small things, little things, not necessarily the big things, but we give thanks for that, absolutely. But in the last 24 hours, because you're gonna have this as a daily practice, in the last 24 hours, some things that breeze that I feel like, oh my God, that was so good, and feel it in your body. Feel that gratitude. I see I cook a piece of chicken yesterday, you see? What? And just feel that and embody it. 3 things, 5 things, and then after you start out with that gratitude and you fill yourself with that full joy and gratitude, then you take your 5 minutes of stillness and you might meditate, but you need that time for just you. Some other things that we can do is we need to have routine, things that are in your control. The world is out there and we can't do anything about that. So you wake up, you make your bed, you take a shower. If you do a morning walk, do your morning walk. Whatever it is that you can do, you have a scheduled time for the kids, you have a scheduled time for lunch, whatever you can control, keep that routine and keep it going. Make a list of things that bring you joy, that are going to fill you up. I have a slide in a little bit that's going to be some prompts about some things that we can do. And then at least one of those things a day, make sure you try to put that into your day so you feel that joy. Make sure we're sleeping well, and also sleeping with the sun, right? So not necessarily going to bed at 3 a.m. and, so keep that routine and keep your schedule. And movement. Right now we're at home, so we may not be running to catch the bus and moving around. And I've read where sitting is the new smoking as far as damage to the body. So let's find ways that we can implement movement and get our bodies going. And finally, the last thing I want to stress is also to connect. We need connection. We're social beings. We're distanced right now, but that doesn't mean that we can't connect. So calling family, FaceTiming, WhatsApping with video, or even, and also phone calls. Make sure that we're connected and we're also using those opportunities to express to family. So here are some lists that could help us build our joy list. Dancing, music is so healing. You could have karaoke with your kids. Use this list to help you to create some things that you can bring into your day, and make sure at least one thing you're doing a day. Here's another little picture of some things that we can use. Color with crayons. If your kids will allow you, adult coloring is can be very therapeutic. So find those things that are you can pull into your day and that you can use to pull you up and fill you up. Also, I want to give some resources for free meditation. At times when we get anxious, we may tend to forget how to breathe. So breath work and meditation is very important. And a lot of us breathe from our chest. I would suggest putting your hand on your belly, and for some of us, belly bigger than other mine, but put your hand on your belly and feel your belly fill up as you breathe in, fill up your belly, and then you feel your belly deflate. And then maybe do 5 or 6 breaths, a couple of times a day, but make sure that we're innervating our bodies and feeding our body with oxygen. So with that, we're gonna, give our gratitude, have our routines down, fill ourselves with joy, and take the time for stillness. And then our cup is gonna get full, and then we can pour into others.
Thank you, Carlene. That was wonderful. I love that. That was great. I just to repeat what I heard daily gratitude, giving thanks. If that means praying or and calling out for the help from God. You talked about creating a routine, making sure that you're doing something that you would do every day, creating a routine for yourself. List of things that will bring you joy. You talked about filling your cup, and then you also talked about doing something that give joy. You talked about making sure that you have enough sleep, that don't stay up late at night, have your 8 hours of sleep, and then you also said you need movements. If that means exercise, get out of the bed, go walking, do something to keep your mind fresh and relaxed, and also make sure that you have connection with the family and friends, whether it's virtual, WhatsApp, FaceTime, but keep connection with the people that mean a lot to you. Thank you so much, Carleen.
You're well. You were listening. Thank you, Leo.
All right, and then here's Susan Hamilton, psychological needs and resources for children with disability. Suzanne? Suzanne?
She's having some issues, I think.
Oh, I think, yes. Okay, so she's not in right now. So should we go to the next person, Beverly? Or we can't do Andrea without we do.
No, go ahead to the next person.
Go to Andrea? Okay.
Yes.
So let's go to Andre Witter, Understanding Psychological Needs of the Deaf Community.
Yes, thank you everyone for having me here and having the deaf community involved in this evening's presentation. The COVID-19 epidemic has been quite a large impact. And, you know, I want to go ahead and compare what life was like before COVID-19 and now. I can't find them. Hold one moment, please. Technical problems, hold one moment, please.
It's okay.
Say again. I can't get Andre.
You can't get Andrea? In the meantime, just go ahead and let me just fill the blank. I want to take this opportunity to, you know, we have never had the deaf community in our midst. It's not that we wouldn't want to, but we just never had the handles. And all of a sudden, we bounce into Diane and bounce into Andre and Susan, and it's just really great to have you in our midst. It's an important thing for us because we want our efforts, the JDTAN effort, to be all inclusive and include everybody, no one left behind. So I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jess, interpret for Andre.
Okay, good evening, you all. Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here to represent the deaf community, and I'm very grateful for the inclusion. I wanted to explain a little bit of the challenges that have that the deaf community have faced since the COVID-19 pandemic. First, I would like to clarify the differences between our language and English. Our language includes a variety of pieces that also one of those parts is facial expressions. I understand that you all see our hands moving, and that's signing, of course, but I want to make sure that you understand that facial expressions is a crucial part of our language. It's a very important part of how we express ourselves. Since COVID-19, we obviously have not been able to socialize as we usually do. And we have had to deal with our emotions in unique ways as well. We are not really getting the feeling that our culture is being expressed clearly at this time. We're not sure if there are better ways that we can handle this, but we are seeing different experiences in the deaf community at this time. We typically go to social places like stores, when we go to the doctor, when we visit a place, that the deaf community tends to gather at. We don't have those places anymore. we are limited to where we can go to communicate with each other. Also, one of the huge problems that we face is lack of interpreter services. There are very limited number of interpreters on the island, and this situation has made access to interpreters even worse. We are left to have to write back and forth with hearing individuals, and it's very difficult for us to be able to communicate that way because English is not our first language. We do have an organization called Jamaican Deaf Advocacy, and we are using that organization to help us provide services to children in schools, but it's been very difficult. We're unable to use technology at this time because there's no interpreting services provided through the phones. There is a such thing as a video relay service where we would see an interpreter with a phone call, but we don't have that service provided to us. That makes it a lot easier for the hearing community to communicate with the deaf community. But we've got to have internet access in order for that to be provided, or else it won't work. That has become more of a challenge these days because it is just, we're unable to communicate with those around us about this life-threatening information. Most of the time children learn Jamaican Sign Language by associating with other deaf members in the community. Because of social distancing, we're unable to do that at this time. Deaf children usually stay overnight at the residential schools, and that is where they typically pick up Jamaican Sign Language. But they're unable to do that now since we have a stay-at-home order. So they're being deprived of language. Also, it's very rare that hearing parents are able to sign fluently with their children at home. Since this COVID-19 pandemic, all of those deaf children have been sent home and are staying at home, which means that there is no communication going on at all for the majority of them. Most of them are extremely emotionally impacted right now because they can't even talk to their own parents about what's going on. They can't even talk to their parents about the most simple things like sharing love or their feelings or their emotions. They're unable to do that with anyone, including their own family members at this time. We've got to be able to figure out a way to support our deaf community through this difficult time. Another challenge that we're currently facing is that the deaf community is extremely worried, and I myself am also very worried about family members, deaf family members who don't visit doctors because of the lack of communication. That's a pretty regular thing before COVID-19 even happened, and now it's even worse. Without interpreting services, doctor's appointments are ineffective, and most of the time, the deaf community honestly refuses to go. It's a great challenge that we face. And now with COVID-19, because our sign language includes facial expressions and mouth morphemes, many of us are wearing masks, which also is a problem for us because we can't see the mouths when they're covered with these masks that we have to wear. Mouth morphemes are equivalent to intonation when hearing people are speaking. Imagine if a hearing person spoke with no tone, just a monotone voice. That's what it's like for us when our mouths are covered. We feel like there are good things going to come out of this situation. But with the masks, we're not getting full communication and the information that we need during this difficult time. We want to be able to visit the doctors, but this is an ongoing struggle. This doesn't happen just 2 or 3 times. In 2012, I had to go to the doctor myself, and they required me to pay for the interpreting services. The deaf community should not have to pay for the interpreting services out of their own pocket. Many people just assume that the interpreting services should be paid by the deaf patient, but the interpreter is serving both the deaf community and the hearing community, including the physician himself. So without interpreters, there is absolutely no clear communication between the two parties. It's very ineffective. One thing I do want to commend throughout this pandemic is that I have seen the Prime Minister providing interpreting services during press briefings. We can see the interpreter on the screen while the Prime Minister is speaking about COVID-19 issues. But a lot of these newscasts are going on for 24 hours at a time. And we're only receiving 2.5 hours of interpreting services because that's maybe how long the interpreter can stay. Now, there are many programs like TVJ, CVM, RJR, and other programs that are on the radio. But that information is not accessed by the deaf community because obviously we can't hear it. Now, when the Prime Minister announced about school remaining closed for the rest of the year, we understood that. However, schools are now being run via online programs. How are the deaf students supposed to access that online information that's being spoken to them? It's a great challenge for the whole deaf community to be able to use online learning services and have access to all the information being taught. The deaf community themselves, the members themselves, are gathering information and putting together videos translated to share with the community. During this COVID-19 pandemic, there are parishes that are providing interpreting services. And if a deaf community member had an emergency, I'm sure if they need to go to the doctor or the hospital, they won't go because there are no interpreter services being provided. So this is a great challenge that we're dealing with. And we are still talking about ways that we can improve this, starting now and ongoing even after COVID-19 is resolved. We would like to have interpreting services provided more regularly to help save lives. We want to break the barriers of communication. Thank you so much for your time.
That is powerful, I must tell you. I had to stop writing, but I am really touched by this because there's things that you say that I never even thought of. And it's because I am sighted and I'm not deaf and I have all my faculties. I'm being able to see everything and hear everything normally. And you're having that kind of challenge. And I'm sure everybody on this panel and people who are listening are hearing things that they never even thought about before. Who would have thought that you don't want to go to the doctor because the doctor can't understand what you're saying, so you need an interpreter? and you have to pay for it. That doesn't even make any sense to me, right? But it makes up full sense to me right now. Social distancing, just the use of mask. Never thought about a deaf person with, not having access to facial expressions to be able to understand fully exactly what you're saying. I never thought about that, but it makes much sense to me now. And this is obviously something that we, if I can say here, hi from JDTAN, we have to take on. It's a challenge. And technology, doing homework. I never thought about that. I thought I've been complimenting the government for actually providing school homework for these students that went home and for the parents to get engaged with the student. I never thought about deaf. And so this is becoming real to me, and I'm sure to the rest of the JDTAN. I am really, really touched. Thank you, Andre, for doing this, and Suzanne and Diane. Thank you so much.
Leo, we have a question for Andre.
Yes.
Someone from Facebook Live feed just put in, that's Sharon Green, would transparent masks be helpful?
Oh, transparent masks. They do have those. Yeah, something to think about, right, Jessica?
May I answer?
Yes.
I honestly doubt that we can get those medical masks. I mean, we have seen pictures of them online. We've seen, the transparent masks, but we're not sure if those are actually going to prevent us from getting ill.
There you go. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions for you after the session as unfold, and we have gone through the presenters. This was a great spot, I must tell you. Thank you so much, Jessica and Diane and Andre. As we move on, let's move to Mary McLaughlin, the psychological and practical benefits of backyard gardening.
Well, thanks for having me, everyone. I'm humbled by what I have heard. I really am humbled, and I think this advice is really very good. I really am a tree person. I'm a fruit tree person. I plant fruit tree, or our organization plants fruit trees in the tropical world, because I'm Jamaican. We started in Jamaica to plant trees. We work extensively in Haiti, throughout the Caribbean, and in Africa. We plant any tree that can sustain life and create value. But we have one particular tree that we love, because I have an expression, filling your belly, and this one tree can really fill your belly, and that's breadfruit. So we plant a lot of breadfruit trees. We also work with people who turn that breadfruit into post-harvest products, mainly a dried breadfruit into breadfruit flour. The reason for that is I look back to a saying that I heard a long time ago, and the saying was, when Noah started to build the ark, it was not raining yet. That's when we wanted to start fruit trees, when everything was good and just rocking along with a steady food supply. But I noticed many people, many countries in the Caribbean import 80% of their food. And that, I think, is just fundamentally wrong. So by planting more fruit trees, planting a lot of breadfruit trees, creating products from that, we would lead to food security. And, we're talking about emotional components here, but if you're hungry, that is our number one stress. So we continue to plant trees, and we have worked through many different disasters in Haiti and in Puerto Rico. And what we have learned is that at periods like that, we have to almost stop planting trees, and we have to look at feeding people right now. And we have done that very well in Haiti through Hurricane Matthew. And right now we're kind of not refocusing, but we're extending our mission to helping people with backyard gardens. If you can plant a backyard garden, and you don't have to have a backyard to do this, you can have an old milk jug, you can have an old pot you're not using, you can take those, replenish the soil, add some banana peel, some compost, some dried leaf, fix that soil up a little better, and start to plant. And when you think of planting, we like to think of, say, planting, we divide it up into groups. You plant your vegetables, you can plant your food kind, as we say in Jamaica, and you can still plant your trees. So when we start to talk about vegetables, the way we like to do it is not everybody has access to go to a farm store to buy their fancy seeds, but you can harvest your own seeds. You think of a sweet pepper, a green pepper, you cut that open, what you see in there, you see your nice seeds. Your Scotch bonnet pepper, you see your seeds. Your tomatoes, your cucumbers, all of these seeds can be harvested. You take them out. Sometimes in tomatoes, it's a little bit squishy, but you take them, you run them through a strainer, wash off some of that pulp, you dry them on a paper towel or an old newspaper. You do that for all your seeds, you keep them in a secure location. And when you're ready to plant, you have your soil in any of your containers, you put them in, you water the plant 3 times a week, get that going, put it in a sunny spot, and you can do that for almost all of your vegetables. Anybody can do that, rich or poor. You feed yourself, but you also, it can be a family activity. Fathers who are stuck at home, who may not have a lot of interacting with their kids, this is something they can focus on. Moms can do it. Grandparents sometimes have a lot of that knowledge that maybe has skipped a generation. So I see this as an opportunity of reconnecting, feeling good about yourself. Watching something grow is so impactful, and it's as calming, and it can make you feel just as good as maybe sitting in that nice cool bathtub when the children are making noise outside. Every day you go, this can be part of your ritual. You go out every day, you water them, you're making sure they're okay. If you have birds picking at them or insects, you take care of it, you cover it a little, and you watch it grow. Now I have a prop for you, which is the next thing, and I hope you can see it. And this is my, can you all see it? This is my sweet potato that I have been growing. And if you look at it, sweet potato is sprouting. And I wanted you to see this. And let me put something behind so you can actually see it properly. You don't have to see my face. Here's my sweet potato that's growing. Well, you get a sweet potato, an Irish potato, yams, and there are 2 ways you can grow it. You take a knife, each one you cut off, you're going to get another little plant. Today, I spoke to a number of farmers in Jamaica because I wanted to make sure I was giving you the right knowledge. And I spoke to a guy in Jeffreystown, St. Mary, and he said, Mary, if they find an old bucket, they just poke some holes in the bottom, throw in some good dirt, some compost, do that with the sweet potato. And in 3 months, you dig down and you see all these little baby sweet potatoes coming up. Now, to me, that is something that can really help a family heal. So that's my sweet potatoes. Now, I can't forget trees because my whole being is about planting trees. So you eat that mango, you wash that seed, you plant it in a pot. You take that sweet sap, you wash that seed, you plant it in a pot. And in a few months, you're going to have a tiny little seed turning into a giant tree. Now that's powerful. Well, it won't turn into a giant tree in 3 months, no, but eventually it will. But you can start to see it grow. And if you don't have land to plant it in, then you can give it as a gift, which again is empowering. So I think that I have done this with my grandchildren last year. I had a whole yard of tomatoes. Everybody shared them. And it was nurturing to the soul. And it was nurturing to the creative stuff that I could cook in my food to help my grandchildren. So I'm not an expert like you guys, but I think this is a pretty good thing. And today, and I don't want to forget this, it's important. Today I was speaking to a woman that I actually taught at high school in Jamaica. Her name is Dr. Elizabeth Ward. She teaches at UWI on the faculty, but she's also head of a program called the Violence Prevention Alliance. She develops in schools in Jamaica peace gardens. Now, this is not time for planting peace gardens, but she has a lot of literature about growing callaloo and sweet peppers and okra that she's happy to share with me, and I am happy to share with anyone as well. I can be reached at info@treesthatfeed.org. Leo Kimon can give you all of my contact information. I'm happy to share it. I'm happy to connect, and I'm happy to connect you with experts in Jamaica that would pass along this knowledge as well. So thank you very much, Leo. I feel very privileged to be among these such brilliant people. Thank you so much.
I'm going to put you on the spot though, and the deaf community too, because if I wasn't so sure, Jessica, if you mentioned anything about that there are specific schools for the deaf, and if there are, here is an opportunity for Mary to get the deaf involved in planting gardens if you don't have them already.
Sure, that man like to give me work, of course.
I'm looking for a response for Jessica and Diane.
Oh, I like that.
Who's this? Who would this be? Oh, look at that.
You see, it doesn't take a lot to feed yourself.
Yes.
And it's not just feeding, and that's very clever. Because if you notice in the middle of that white bucket, that's where you can pour in your water. Yes.
Yes, and you have different levels of growth too. See?
And oh yes, and at this time it's so complex. We have to find other things to do, and any container you can use to plant a little something.
Oh, thank you, Hanif. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Kimon, who was that? That's Anif. It says Anif. All right, thank you so much, Mary. Let's move on to Susan Hamilton. She's back online, and so we'll take Susan Hamilton now. Psychological needs and resources for children with disabilities. Suzanne? Kimon, is Suzanne there?
Yes, she is. I'm trying to unmute her. Suzanne, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right, let's go back to her then, because we've unmuted her on this side, but it seems that her phone is muted.
Okay, so we'll take the next person, Dr. Beverly Gordon, anger management and conflict resolution. Beverly?
Yes, so wherever there are two individuals in any space, there is bound to arise conflict. Conflict is natural and normal in relationships. There are never two individuals who are going to see eye to eye 100% of the time. So prior to COVID-19, there existed conflict in just about every relationship. The problem is that with the conditions that COVID-19 has created, these conflicts are likely to become enlarged, to get blown out of proportion in some cases. And the source of the problem is usually anger. Anger is an emotion that is common to all human beings. And it can in fact be used for positive purposes. For example, it could be used, a person could get angry enough to actually take action in a situation that requires action to save somebody's life. However, a lot of times our anger gets directed at each other and we do harm with the anger. What are the sources of anger in the family, for example? Well, some examples would be unresolved conflicts from the past. So if there were difficulties that were not addressed and nobody talked about it, nobody tried to resolve the situation, so it sits there and it kind of bubbles under the surface, and then something else happens like COVID-19 and poof, it explodes. Other sources of anger: financial stress, certainly with individuals being laid off from their jobs, being required to stay home from their jobs, losing their jobs because businesses have closed or other related reasons. Financial stress becomes a major focus. Right now, there are some states here in the United States where individuals are being required to stay home and they want to go back to work, because even though their lives might be at stake, they are so stressed by the financial concerns that they would rather go back to work and face the possibility of getting sick. So this is another source of anger at this time. Frustration. Frustration occurs when an individual's goals are thwarted. In other words, something that somebody really wants to happen is not happening because of some outside force. And so because of this outside force that's preventing them from achieving their goals, they become frustrated. Frustration leads to anger, which leads to aggression and violence sometimes. Lack of internal resources. So the individual who does not have the type of personality or genetic makeup that deals well with frustration, this is a difficult time for them, because the impulse, not being able to control one's impulse, will lead to behaviors that could be dangerous to the person's self or others. Fear and anxiety are huge factors in the COVID-19 pandemic. People are experiencing fear because they hear about people dying. The numbers keep going up and up and up. And sometimes people wonder, am I next? Will I be next? And so because of that fear and anxiety that's happening within the individual, sometimes it manifests itself in behaviors that are inappropriate. So we're talking about anger and conflict resolution. So anger is one of the major emotions that can emerge at this time. As a matter of fact, there's an alarming trend, a worldwide alarming trend right now that's being reported by the United Nations, the New York Times, and other credible sources that indicate that there's a rise, there's a significant increase in domestic abuse, which is a result of anger and someone trying to exercise power and control in a situation where they feel as if they don't have control. So the individual who is being abused, for example, is now put in a situation where not only do they experience fear for their lives, but they also experience a sense of disconnection from their social network. Some individuals live in places where they might not have good internet connection, for example. So they don't even have that means of communicating with other people. In addition to that, the fear that they're experiencing might actually immobilize them. So they start to experience something that's referred to as learned helplessness. So with this state of learned helplessness, the person feels as if in the past, I have never been able to do anything to stop the abuse. And now with this current situation, I definitely can't do anything about anything. And so they give up. I noted in one article that I read recently that the reports of domestic abuse in Jamaica, they feel as if the numbers are not accurate because people are not reporting as much as they were reporting prior to COVID, which is interesting because there's a worldwide increase in domestic abuse. So the question is it because there is a decrease in domestic abuse, or is it because individuals who are being abused are so frightened, so afraid, so immobilized by fear, anxiety, and feelings of helplessness that they're actually probably not reporting? And then in any case, how do they report now? Because you're not even supposed to go to another person's house. They won't let you in. So can I run to the neighbor? No, they're not going to let me in. And if I run to the neighbor and they don't let me in, he's going to catch me. You notice I said he, because predominantly it's a situation where it's a male who's the perpetrator. This is not to say that males do not get abused as well. They do. There are reports of male individuals who do get abused, but because of societal factors, you know, that doesn't get played up as much. And in actual fact, the percentages do show that the majority of persons who are being abused are female. So this is an extreme situation, the idea of anger reaching and conflict reaching the point of abuse. But what can we do as individuals if we know someone who we know that in the past they've been abused, they've been physically or verbally abused? What can we do at this time? We can't go visit them. So I have a few ideas about what we possibly could do that might make a difference. And if there's any slight possibility that it might make a difference, I think we should try it. So one thing is, check on your friends. The person who you know has a history of being abused. If it is possible to reach them by letter, by email, by text, by telephone, by donkey, motorbike, whatever, try to find some way that you can actually connect with this person in order to check on them. And when you call them, if you call them, don't say, are you okay? Are you being abused? Don't do that. You know, just, are you okay? Well, how's everybody? If there's anything that you need, let me know. At least that opens the door so that this person knows that somebody's paying attention and somebody has their interests at heart. So if they ever work up courage to be able to reach out to someone, they know that they have you as a possible person to reach out to. You could also volunteer at one of the local programs, because there are still shelters that are functioning even during this time of COVID-19. You can also share information that you have about domestic abuse on social media. Say, for example, your Facebook page. So you're not directing it at anybody in particular. You're just kind of posting this information that this number, if there were anybody who had this problem, this is a number that they could call. Or there's a shelter at such and such a place in our town. I know that in Jamaica, there are shelters in Kingston and Montego Bay. I'm not really familiar with other areas to that extent. There might be someone who knows about other places that might have help. Don't judge the person. You know, one of the things I've noticed over the years, the women who get abused, and women are particularly hard on these women, because we say, why don't you just leave? Why are you still there? Well, there's a whole story behind that I don't have time to explain right now. But the point is, this person is not deliberately being stupid. We say, you know, oh, she's so stupid. That's not what it is. There's a whole psychology behind it that I can't go into right now, but just believe me, don't judge the person. Don't discard them. Don't abandon them because you think that their behavior is not what it should be. Just understand that you're not in their situation. And if you were in their situation, you might very well be behaving in the same way. Don't judge until you have walked in that person's shoes. Okay, so more common experiences of anger and conflict resolution for most of us will not include domestic abuse, but that is a particularly important area right now during the COVID-19. It is something that the United Nations is emphasizing and regarding as a worldwide emergency. And so I'm sure that Jamaica is no different. So we need to pay attention to wherever it is that we live, because this happens on a daily basis, actually, whether we have COVID-19 or not. But more commonly, we have experiences of conflict in our families that sometimes we don't pay attention to it. We haven't had time to pay attention to it. Well, guess what? COVID-19 caused us to sit down, stand still, and now we have time to think. And so maybe this might be an opportunity to deal with some of those conflicts that have not been dealt with. And I just want to share maybe 5 or 6 little pointers in terms of dealing with conflict. Assume a problem-solving approach. So what I mean by that is, a lot of times when we get angry, we want to recount all the wrongs that this person has done over the past 20 years. Well, that's not going to solve the problem, because the moment we start accusing someone, they're going to get on the defensive. So make sure that the issues that you're dealing with are the current issues, the relevant issues, and do not remind the person of something that you told them that you already forgave them for. Because if you bring it up again, that means you didn't forgive them. And I believe that this time during COVID-19 is a time for self-reflection, a time when we can look into our own behaviors and our own thoughts and practices and really come up with creative, innovative ways of dealing with things differently from how we have dealt with them in the past. Think about it. If the ways that we have tried to deal with conflict in the past didn't work, what makes you think it's going to work now when everybody's under stress, when everybody's all locked up together in the same house for 21 days and more? No, that closeness and that every single day being in the same space is going to increase the conflict. So we need to choose different ways now of dealing with that conflict. Another thing is when you start to talk to the other individual that you're trying to resolve the conflict with, start out with an affirmation. Say something positive. I mean, there's nobody in the world who is 100% bad. So try to find something positive to say at the beginning and at the end. Make sure that you're going to state your truth clearly, but clearly and kindly. I honestly don't believe that there's ever any reason to shout, yell, or even cuss when you're feeling upset. Because actually what you're doing, you're creating barriers between you and the other person. What really creates connection is to be able to speak to modulate your voice and to speak in a kind way. Kindness breeds kindness. You know, the Bible doesn't lie. And it says angry words stir up anger, right? So if you say harsh words to someone, they're going to get angrier. So don't go in fighting, you know. Remember also that if the person decides to engage with you in resolving the issue, it must mean that they care at some level, or else they wouldn't bother to try to resolve the issue. They just leave or ignore you. So if the other person is willing to engage with you in conflict resolution, it means that they care at some level. Find the positive. Remember, finally, the goal of conflict resolution is not to prove that you are right. Being right isn't all that. If you value the relationship and you really want to resolve the conflict, think of a win-win situation so that you come out of the situation with both individuals feeling that they have achieved something, with feeling as if something has been resolved for both of you. So you come out of the situation, both of you are able to feel good about something about yourself. Being right isn't all that, because you could be as right as you can be and lose that loved one. It's not worth it. It's really not worth it. So again, finally, I want to say, love covers a multitude of sins. So even though you might recognize that, you know, of course you're right. You're always right, right? But if you could just cover the situation with love, because love thinketh no evil. Love is not puffed up, does not vaunt itself, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil. So love, in the final analysis, is the answer.
Awesome.
I'd like to ask a few questions. Dr. Gordon, I'm going to ask you the first question, and then there's another question on here, which is directed to Andre.
Could you hold those questions until after Pastor Norman Hemmings is done?
Okay.
Yeah.
Leo, Susan is back on. Susan, are you there?
Yes.
We're not hearing her quite clearly at all. Is Susan in Jamaica?
Yes, she's having bandwidth issues. Okay, we'll have to go back to her. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Suzanne. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
We're hearing you, but we're not hearing you.
Everyone, are you hearing me? I'm serious. Yeah.
Just one and two words we're hearing.
That's okay.
So I hope that before we get done, you'll be able to get some bandwidth that we can encourage this conversation. Suzanne, we would really love to hear it because that's
Most
a
definitely. Yes. Yes.
Oh, there,
A
but there you are.
population.
There you are.
Are you
There you
hearing?
are. Yeah.
I'm telling you, the devil.
You wanna
Okay.
go ahead,
Good night,
try.
everyone. Can you hear?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Okay. Okay, so I deal with persons with disabilities. I am in charge of training persons with disabilities. All types of disabilities, whether it be blind, deaf, physical, intellectual. And personally, I have a child with a disability as well, a young adult. So the psychological needs of this population are very great. Okay, it's very great. They need a lot of support. So, for example, children with autism being locked in a lockdown situation now will have severe challenges, and their parents will have even more challenges because they're used to dropping off the children to school and having that intervention, especially if they are severely autistic or have ID challenges. Imagine some of those children being locked up, as Beverly said, with maybe not some nice people around them who want them, they don't understand why they're banging their head on the wall or why they have repetitive behavior. And so for these parents especially, they need a lot of support, whether it be through a helpline, but they need someone to speak to during these really uncertain times. For children, young adults with varying disabilities, especially girls with disabilities, that's my main concern. Some of them will find themselves in risky situations now, and will indulge in risky behavior because of the need to eat, to have somewhere to sleep, because a lot of the persons with disabilities in Jamaica, young persons, have no family, supportive family. So sometimes those persons are not in the government net for social security. They're wayfarers. They catch one place tonight and they sleep somewhere else the other night. And we have girls who are deaf. We have girls who have intellectual disabilities. And now with COVID, these are concerns that we have as administrators, as guidance counselors in the school system. We are very concerned because although they have physical needs, food, medicine, there's also the isolation and the depression now that will come with this, with this pandemic. And because their needs are so varying, for example, someone in a wheelchair, a young lady or a young man in a wheelchair, they're already at home. The only time they get to go out is when they come to school or maybe they have a job. So when they're at home now, those feelings of isolation and depression and anxiety will hit them even more than, and if it's hitting a normal person, imagine someone with a disability. Those that are intellectually disabled and have issues with understanding how information is conveyed to them, they may not really understand what is happening and will not conform to the rules of the pandemic because they really don't understand. And we also have to look out for those persons that, we'll call simple. Oh, if it's a simple boy or a little, she don't fully understand. She foo-foo. But those are the persons with learning disabilities or they have severe ID that we have to ensure that they fully understand what is happening to them and how to deal with these. For children, for little ones, I would say some of them are in rural areas in Jamaica now. And currently we have an organization here, community rehabilitation, community-based rehab. And they told me today that those parents are heavily stressed because in addition to finding food, they have to find things like diapers for their children, bed pads, thermometers, and liquid food for that population, because those are the ones that are bedridden. These are the ones that you don't see.
Suzanne there. Thank you so much, Suzanne. We heard most of what you said and it all made sense to us. I am so sorry, but you're having so many challenges, and I hope we can catch you back another time. I'm sure we will anyway. We have several seminars coming up. Thank you, Suzanne. Pastor Norman Hemming, I know there's no S on your name.
Right. It's fine. That's fine.
See, all right, I got that. And so you get the great opportunity of being the most important of everybody, because you get to listen to everybody. I'm not calling you last one, I'm saying the most important because you get to listen to everybody, and now you have the floor all for yourself.
Everything has been said. So
Yeah.
all right. So there's this old Jamaican proverb that says, "Rock stone there, river bottom, the nose the sun hot." So some of you, your mother might have been talking to you, and she might have said to you, or your grandmother, and she might say, "Pig said to mama, make your mouth so long. My child, you grow, you will know." Well, that's the situation that we find ourselves in here today with respect to the situation with COVID-19 and how it's impacted us emotionally, psychologically, how it's impacted us spiritually, how it's impacted every type of Jamaican, whether we're at home in Jamaica or we're throughout the diaspora. Well, there's a passage of scripture that's found in Daniel, the 10th chapter, verses 16, 17, and verse 19. And that passage of scripture says, just to paraphrase quickly, it says, "I'm overcome with anguish because of the vision, my Lord, and I feel very weak. How can I, your servant, talk with you, my Lord? My strength is gone and I can hardly breathe." And God responds to Daniel in that vision by saying, "Do not be afraid. You who are highly esteemed," he said, "peace, be strong now." So there are three quick things that we want to talk about, and it's actually been covered already by everyone. It is one, to seek God. Secondly, to take the time during this COVID-19 to pray for others. And lastly, to stay strong and trust God's plan. So this whole idea of seeking God at a time when there were over 233 deaths, 233 persons in Jamaica with COVID-19, when every 32 seconds in the United States, someone is dying from COVID-19. It's hard sometimes to understand when we know that 700 of our Jamaican diaspora nationals are stuck on a Carnival cruise ship somewhere in the world right now and locked in their cabins, and their only view is a view out to the ocean, and at night all they can see is darkness. Or there are an additional 332 of our fellow diasporans who are aboard a Royal Caribbean vessel right now in the same exact position as a Carnival cruise line. And there are over 260 in our region here in the South, in these southeastern 13 states and Cayman, hotel workers who have been let go because of the downturn in the hotel industry. But what do we do in these times when all of these negative things that we're hearing are going on? It seems that in the times of when they were good, right? When we were in the river bottom, when we didn't realize that the sun was hot, when we didn't understand why this our mother's mouth was so long. What was going on is that we had become hearing impaired, deaf, if you will, towards the voice of God. So this time is a time, as sad as it is for us, with all the tragedies that are going on, it's a time when God begins to turn us back to Him, to remind us of who we are, but more importantly, whose we are. You see, as a Jamaican people, we have a rich legacy and culture and heritage in religions, right? In fact, the Jewish religion in Jamaica started all the way back in 1494. We believe the first Jewish community was on the island of Jamaica. And in this area called Port Royal, and in fact, in Kingston, in early Kingston, some 18% of the population of Kingston at one time were Jewish Jamaicans. With respect to the Muslim American community, we believe that the Muslim American community arrived at a very early time as well on the island of Jamaica. And in fact, at some point in our history, some 18% of nationals in one of our parishes in Jamaica were actually Muslim Jamaicans. In fact, this man that you may know, because you probably play his music all the time there, Leo, on your show, this man by the name of Prince Buster was actually a Muslim Jamaican. And in fact, most of his family still live here in South Florida. And some of them are over in England as well. But he was a Muslim for his entire career, but he was afraid to announce who he was because he was afraid of a loss of record sales. At that time. But this tragedy brings us back not only to our Jewish heritage, not only to our Muslim heritage, but to our Christian heritage, to our Hindu heritage, to our Baha'i heritage, to all these different things. But as a Christian pastor, it brings me back to Jesus the Christ and to my belief in him and what he can do for us. So it causes us, like Daniel in Daniel chapter 10, to stop and to begin to reach out to God. In fact, in Daniel chapter 10, what we have is not that so much that we're reaching out to God, but that we're recognizing that God is here with us. Because Daniel recognized that God, in what's called a Christophany, in this Daniel 10 story, had come down to earth before the New Testament to speak with Daniel and to reassure him. The second part, right? So that's something that's good for us to hold on to. Let us allow and take this time of quiet, of our ears eating grass, to go back and to seek God and to recognize his presence here with us even right now. Then secondly, we should take this time that we're locked away and seemingly social distance to pray for others. That's what's happening right now all over our community. But it's not just prayer, it's not just words with our lips in terms of praying for others. What was happening in Daniel's time is that 50,000 of the Jewish diaspora had left Babylon to return to Israel, but hundreds of thousands of others had remained over in Babylon. But it's kind of the same thing that we're experiencing here, right? Where we have all of these thousands and thousands of Jamaicans over in England and in South America, Central America, here in the United States and in Canada. And even seemingly that there are more of us outside of Jamaica than there are in Jamaica and have no intention of returning home. Same situation was happening in this Daniel chapter 10. Of our Bible. However, the thing that Daniel did is that he took the time to pray for others, to reach out to others. So in the same way, we have our Consul General here in South Florida, who is answering the phones literally with his staff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, setting up connections with our Jamaica diaspora community in very practical ways to make sure that the hotel workers who are stuck in limbo and can't return home because Jamaica doesn't reopen their borders until sometime around May the 31st, making sure that they have food to eat. Those are some of the things that we can do. We as the members of the diaspora and even in Jamaica can make sure that the least fortunate in our respective societies have food to eat and have so we would develop that sense of community for one another at this time through our belief and the strength that we have in God. But then finally, with Daniel in the story in Daniel chapter 10, God reassures Daniel because Daniel is a bit despondent because he's still left behind as a slave in Babylon. But God reminds him and says, listen, trust me, take heart, be strengthened. Know that I have this plan for you, Daniel. That's going to happen. And even if you don't see it with your eyes, it's going to come to pass. I have not forgotten you. In the same way, I believe that God has not forgotten the Jamaican diaspora community. That this same Jesus Christ that our grandmother and our mother served, this same Jesus the Christ that accompanied slaves from the sun-kissed shores of Africa all the way over to the Caribbean, here to the Americas and in Central and South America, this same God is still alive and well and hasn't forgotten us and hasn't forgotten our community. He wants to remind us that he loves us so much. He wants to remind us that he's here with us even now, that if we just take the time to reach out to him, right? To speak to him, to take the time to no longer be deaf, to no longer be hearing impaired to his voice and to his words, to take the time to pray for others instead of focusing on praying for ourselves and what we're going through, and then to trust his plan. Just sit back and wait to see what it is that God is going to do for all of us. You see, rock, stone, or river bottom, no knows a sun hot. Listen, all of us as Jamaicans will finally figure out and understand and come to appreciate what it is that all those elderly people like myself have been saying all of these years, right? That mama, make your mouth so long. My child, you'll grow, you will know. All of us will know, but in a good way, because we will develop and progress and become more reasonable and more understanding and more intelligent than we ever have been in the past. Walk good.
I'm supposed, I'm going to ask, did you grow with your grandma?
Yes.
All right, well said. If I may impose on you for another couple of minutes, yes. I know that you're law enforcement, and I want that law enforcement expertise. Right. Give us your thoughts on what's going on in Jamaica, what's going on in America from a law enforcement perspective.
Right. From a law enforcement perspective, it is clear to us that there are some people who are always going to use this opportunity to try to take advantage of others. But one of the good things about being locked away or being socially distanced and some communities having curfews is that it actually is helping to lower the crime rate, which is bizarre and kind of macabre in a way when you think about it, right? You're like, oh, that's not what we want, right? Not in that way, right? But it actually it is working towards that. So this is the time in terms of a law enforcement perspective where we have to make sure that we strike a careful balance. It's a careful balance between protecting our democratic rights and institutions, whether we're here in America, in England, in Jamaica, or elsewhere throughout the diaspora, while at the same time making sure that we're safe, protected, and secure, and are able to protect our judiciary, able to depend on our law enforcement agencies, both federal and state. But it's a careful balance that we have to be careful to make sure that we don't cross the line to the extent that we give away so much of our rights, right, to law enforcement, that after this all passes, we realize that we're in a state that we didn't anticipate, that we didn't expect. All right, so be very careful with what's going on. But our law enforcement agencies are doing a phenomenal job right now in Jamaica and here in the States in terms of being on the front line. They're the first ones responding when the call goes out. Many of them are the ones that are dying and are becoming infected with the COVID-19. So let's take the time to pray for them as well and to be supportive of them and to take the time to advocate on behalf of protecting them and protecting our courts and protecting all those who are not only in the front line in medicine, but in the front line in law enforcement.
Thank you so much. Oh my God. I must tell you that I don't remember sitting down for 2 hours and listening to people talk and listening intently, meaning that I hear everything that everybody says. I'm always, my mind is always gone, but it was really great to hear all of you. It's really good, really, really good stuff. And I'm seeing many persons thanking us for this kind of information. Everybody's saying that, moving speech presentation and so forth. So really good. So we're going to take some questions now. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Sortavia Manning-Dixon to take the questions, and then each person can answer. Just shoot the questions over to the panel or to the panelists.
Okay. All right. So this question is for Andre from Facebook. They want you to, what is the correct terminology? Is it deaf versus hearing impaired?
Unmute her.
Yes, deaf is actually the correct terminology. It's the politically correct terminology to use these days. The word hearing impaired implies that something is wrong with us, and that's not our belief. There are some community members who prefer to be called hard of hearing, which means that they have a little bit of a hearing loss, but the part of the community who embraces the culture prefers to be called deaf. So we are very proud of our culture, and we like to call ourselves deaf as well. We prefer that the hearing community also call us deaf.
We are glad for that explanation because, you know, when we grew up in our country, right, in Jamaica, the word deaf, you know, the opposite of what you said is what we use as derogatory. When we use the term deaf, it actually, you call someone deaf, you're calling them dumb or, you know, something like that. It's not a good word that we use. So it's good to hear that it's acceptable term and that we can use it comfortably.
All right, another question coming in for Andre again. It's from Mike McClellan in Jamaica, and the question is the Jamaican Sign Language the same as American Sign Language? And can deaf persons from two different countries sign easily?
I'm good. First of all, we have our own language in Jamaica. It's actually called Country Sign Language. That is actually a dialect derived from missionaries who came here from abroad and maybe set up a language in schools and in churches. And all of those dialects influenced together became Jamaican Sign Language. There are many similarities with ASL, but I just want to clarify that they are not 100% the same, ASL and JSL. So in Jamaica, the recognized sign language is called Jamaican Sign Language, or JSL, but there is also a strong dialect called Country Sign Language. And I want to also emphasize that facial expressions is a very, very important part of our language.
All right, the next question could be for any of the panelists. The comment first that led to the question was, there are children who are in the situation of being abused and school was an escape for them. Now, what are pointers that are available for those students? I was thinking Dr. Bradford or Dr. Gordon. Maybe you could answer that question.
Okay, so a child being abused, similarly to, well, there's some similarities with spousal abuse, but of course, one of the major differences is that a child feels they're smaller than the people who are abusing them, generally speaking. And so they feel more helpless. I think the basic principles remain the same, though, in the sense that they need to be connected with the source of help. And so I'm not sure how exactly everything is being done in Jamaica in terms of keeping in touch with the children and in the home, but certainly the teachers are communicating with the children, whether they're doing it online or they're dropping off work or the parents are picking up work at the school or whatever. But it's really important to make sure that there remains some kind of connection, because one of the things that you don't want to happen is for the child to feel hopeless. If the child gets to the point where they feel as if there is nothing that I can do to change my situation, sometimes this can even lead to suicidal thoughts and attempts. And so one of a key thing is to keep social connection and somehow make sure that somebody knows what is happening with that child. That's one thing anyway.
Dr. Bradford, did you have any pointers that you wanted to add?
You know, I think when I heard that question, I thought about the sense of loss that the children like this would face. When they go to school, they have a haven, and now they don't. And I would say that the teachers, again, I know that we're just asking you to add another thing to your plate, but a simple thing like checking in. How are you doing? Maybe, you know, seeing if you're talking to the child, if the child can move out of the space when, you know, where the perpetrator might be. So, you know, would you like to go outside and just tell me how you're doing? Something like that. Or when you drop the work off for the children, check in with them. I would say check in for bruises, just do a cursory kind of check, because if the child has been abused physically, it's likely that it might show up somewhere on the child. So check in for two things: emotional wellness as well as physical wellness. And you can't take the child's clothes off. But another thing that I think is important for us to know is that children's eyes will tell you their story. They do. And so be alert to things like that. Look at, you know, if they look around sort of furtively, you know, when adults are around, if they seem to tense up in any way. And I know it might be a little bit harder for you to do that in terms of, because you don't necessarily have the experience, but look at just their actions, their eyes, their behaviors, and that can tell you a lot. During your art classes and stuff like that, you might want them to draw pictures of what home is like, what is going on at home. You know, that can tell you a lot. The person who is the perpetrator is going to loom over that child. It's going to seem so big and so overpowering that you can see that. And so if you know that that has been happening, it's important for you to start looking for the signs. And art is a really good way of trying to get some information from the child who you know might be abused. And children want to tell you, believe me, they want to tell you, but they have to tell you in their way.
We have a follow-up question. It says, with COVID-19, there's a need and opportunity to plan for the future, and it entails bringing things from the past. How do you do this in a way that reduces or avoid conflict?
I would say that and I think Dr. Gordon might have talked a little bit about that, but I would say maybe they could have a contract that we're not going to talk about that right now, because other things are more important right now. Promise, we're going to deal with it, all right? But right now, the basic things that are really kind of at the forefront, like taking care of the home, taking care of the bills, the children, making sure that they are okay. Let's focus on that. And sometimes it might be hard for people when they're in that emotional place to say that. But again, I want to sort of like piggyback on something that Pastor Hemming said. We can pray, okay? Maybe we can incorporate prayer into or communication. Maybe we can just agree to disagree for a little bit and just sort of like hold it off and prioritize what is important right now, with the awareness and the agreement that they will come back to the issue.
Anyone can answer this question. It's from Lyndon Johnson from Carib Press. It says, what is the testing method using in Jamaica to know if someone is COVID-19 positive or negative? I see police with an instrument, maybe it's a thermostat pointing at individual foreheads. So I guess clarification on that. Do we have that information?
I don't think we have that information. I don't think anyone here is capable of answering that question.
Well, I don't have the specific information as to what they're doing in Jamaica, but just to say that if you see someone pointing a thermometer, it's probably a digital thermometer that actually records the temperature. Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, okay. Go ahead, you have it.
This
Go
is
ahead.
Andre. I actually have a friend who I'm pretty close with, and they actually contracted coronavirus. They flew in from the US, and I was talking with them and checking on them, seeing how they were feeling, and they're recovered now. But they said that the test is a tiny little strip that is actually stuck in your nostril. And once they were tested, they actually had to be tested 3 times within 48 hours, 3 different times. And they had to check their temperature, you know, on the forehead using that device. So I know that they did experience that. Now, after it was confirmed that they had contracted the virus, they also checked their temperature actually under their armpit. So I know that they are checking the temperatures in different places of the body. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
All right, thank you so much. I hope that did help or to start helping. All right.
We have one more question. Any advice for those who avoid conflict as their norm? And that's from Annette, and that's with confronting uncomfortable issues.
I'm so glad that she asked that question because I want to emphasize that avoiding conflict or avoiding anything that causes anxiety actually increases anxiety. So there are about 4 different ways that people deal with conflict. They either avoid it altogether, you know, I'm out of here, I'm not getting into an argument, or they accommodate. You know, they say, oh yes, you're right. They don't really mean that the other person's right, but they just to kind of quash the thing. It's very similar to avoiding, but goes a little bit further. And then there's compromising, where the 2 people actually engage and in discussion, and they agree that, you know, no one will get everything, but I'll get a little and you'll get a little, and so they both come away feeling okay. But according to evidence-based information, the best approach is really collaboration. So what happens is that the 2 people go into the conversation or the discourse with the goal of arriving at a conclusion where they can find a situation that is meaningful to both of them, or a resolution, sorry, that is meaningful to both of them. And so they work towards a common goal. And so it doesn't feel as if I gave you a little and you gave me a little. It feels as if, oh, we came together with, you know, a conclusion that works for both of us. I wanted to actually add to the previous question that talked about leaving, it might have been a comment, I'm not sure, but leaving a situation of conflict until later on when things are, you know, there's some wisdom to that, although I again want to emphasize that it is important not to avoid conflict. I think we've been given, in this terrible situation that we've been given, we've also been given a quiet space in which we can actually deal with that which we probably won't deal with when things start rushing again and everybody's going at 100 miles per hour. And then you forget that you had said that you were going to deal with so-and-so. And then what happens then is that it doesn't get dealt with, but it's still simmering under there because nobody ever turned off the stove. You know, it was on low, but it's still simmering. And then one day again, something happens that triggers that same response, and the conflict now is 10 times bigger than it was before. I firmly believe in dealing with conflicts while they're present. Don't put it off. You don't know if you have tomorrow anyway. So deal with it now, but deal with it in the right way with the right support.
I want to add, if I could, that what Dr. Bradford and what you're saying, Beverly, Dr. Gordon is saying is these are discussions that are relative to healthy relationships. We mentioned before that, you know, domestic violence is on the rise, and so or the reports of it anyway are this is a very tenuous situation we're in. So when it comes to conflict and when it comes to difficult relationships or relationships where there is domestic violence, these kinds of discussions, I think we have to be careful and gentle when we're getting ready to address them.
I totally agree with you, Carlene, and I'm glad you made that distinction because that is really important. If you recall, we talked about conflict in a violent relationship, and then conflict in a normal relation or a healthy relationship. So when I'm talking about dealing with it in the present and not avoiding, thank you so much for saying that, because it is important to understand that this is when you're dealing with a health relationship. The other way of dealing with it in terms of waiting until things calm down, that is the right way to deal with it in terms of a violent relationship. Thank you so much.
And I would like to add, as you talk about that too, is that children are, and we were talking about the relationship with children and their parents, and there will be conflict. You will find maybe that parents of teenagers will find that they are in more conflict with their children. This is a natural part, and I do want to say this, a natural part of their development when children are, sort of being defiant, they are throwing tantrums, they're being disruptive and disobedient. I know it's hard for parents of teenagers to know that, but conflict will happen, and it's going to be very important, again, for us to talk to our children. Like I said, talk to them, do not talk at them, because when we talk at them, they will pick up that we are not really communicating with them, and they will shut us out. And so the conflict, of course, can develop even stronger between parents and children.
If I may say one quick thing with respect to children or suspected child abuse on the island of Jamaica. If you suspect child abuse on the island of Jamaica, you should definitely call the police department. But outside of that, the Office of Children's Registry is open until 11 p.m. at night, even now during this COVID crisis. So you should dial 888-PROTECT if you're in Jamaica. Also, if you're a digital subscriber, you can dial 631-8933. If you're a Flow subscriber, you should dial 631-8908, and you can anonymously report if you suspect child abuse.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Any more questions?
No, we have a few comments that we want to share that were, I have, where is it? Great session. Thank you, panelists and host and everyone involved. That's coming from, sorry, I just lost her. Elizabeth Hilton in Jamaica, I think. I'm not sure. And then there are a few more. Dr. Garden, actually, no, this is one, sorry. I'm scrolling through as we go. Good words, Pastor. I hope there is a resurgence of commitment to spiritual thought as it informs much of our lives. That's from, she doesn't want me to say her name or his name, so. And there is a few more that I wanted to share because I think that, we need feedback to hear that people are benefiting from this as well. And it says, excellent presentation. The environment forces us to move from avoidance as an option to dealing with conflict. And there's another one I wanted to share, sorry. Maybe I should have written all of them down, but they're coming in fast. And Carlene M.
Yes.
Largy says, very opening presentation, a real informative piece. Thanks, Andre.
Here's one from Louise Stimson. Louise Stimson says, very informative. I need to hear this. I feel like I'm falling apart in my own home. Excellent. Onija says, just learned something new, and she was referring to the use of the word deaf. Excellent. Good words passed. Okay. Gretel, incidentally, she's one of the reminding us that to do anyone. Okay. I think that's it. I should say then, if you don't have any more questions, I think we have.
There's one more. Mary
Okay.
Jane from California said, very impressive. Keep up the good work. I have taken a lot from this session and I look forward to hearing more.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll be providing more as the time goes. And if that's it, I'll give each panelist just 1 minute to give your final thoughts. 1 minute. So we'll take it from the top again. Gretel, 1 minute. You have to unmute. You have to unmute.
Sorry about that. I just want to say a couple of things. If we're going to have good relationship with our children during this time, just a few things. One, explain to our children what is happening at their developmental level. Ask the children what questions they may have, because they do have questions. Please allow yourself to make mistakes. As parents, you are not perfect. There is no perfect parent, so allow yourself to make mistakes. Be prepared for questions that you cannot answer, and you can make that a kind of fun activity where you can go and research the questions. So a child might ask you something, where is God when this is happening? Why is he allowing so many people to die? Allow yourself for questions like that, and just keep in check how you talk about things that are right there in front of you, like money worries. And most importantly, talk calmly with your children about this, and be honest about your ability to protect them, because they need to know that you cannot protect them all the time, but you are going to try your best to protect them. And if it means, for example, that you have to tell them you're not going outside, you're not going to play with your friends, you have to let them know that when they are outside your parameters, that you cannot help them at all. So just being honest with them and help them, and try most of all to limit the amount of time that they spend listening to the news, because a lot of things are out there that can be anxiety provoking, create more worry, more stress, and more a sense of loss and helplessness in the children.
Thank you. Carlene, 1 minute. Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm going to be brief. I'm just going to say, full up your cup. It's a very, very difficult time. Full up your cup. Self-care is not selfish. It is essential. So take care of yourself.
Good.
And then you can take care of others, because it's a lot. It really, we're all going through a lot.
Susan, we might be able to hear you. Say, take 1 minute. Is she still there, Kimon?
I'm trying to, let me see, unmute her, hold on. No.
She's not there. All right, great. Let's go to Andre. 1 minute.
Yes. First, I just want to use the example, or I wanted to comment about the picture that Mary showed us regarding food and people working together to grow food. I think that's a wonderful idea. And it kind of applies to the deaf community as well. You know, if everyone is willing to learn sign language and communicate with each other, no one will notice that we have a disability. But if one moment, please.
Yeah, that's okay.
It won't be recognized as a disability. Okay. If we all have the rights, equal rights, then there wouldn't be as many disability labels. And we also need to work together to improve communication access for the deaf community. And when children are born, they should be learning their language immediately. And that would be the best way. Parents should also have basic communication skills. And that is something that we definitely need to improve on.
And especially our doctors. Definitely.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much, Andre. Mary McLaughlin, I know I put you on the on notice there, and it came to pass because Andre is accepting the.
Well, I came here to talk, but I learned a lot more than I said, and I just want to encourage everybody, just get a little can of soup can, a milk box, anything, put some dirt in, and just save some pepper seeds and grow them. You'll get both emotional help and you'll get something fun to eat. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much. Beverly Gordon.
I'm just very grateful that we were able to have this discussion tonight. We're in a very difficult time, a time that most of us have never seen before, and we have no idea how things will be going forward. But you know, communication, open communication, and concern for each other will go a long way in taking us through to the end and whatever happens in this pandemic.
And so let's see if Pastor Hemming is at the bottom of the river still.
All right then. Well, listen, Leo, in this 2-week period, we're actually remembering the Holocaust for this 2 weeks, coming through difficult situations. Here's a quote that perhaps we could close out with. Persistence and resilience only come from having been given the chance to work through difficult problems. Persistence and resilience only come from having been given the chance to work through difficult problems.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I want to say thanks to Ortavia and Kimon and her team. Thank you guys for keeping us, you know, in this technology world, keeping us together, make it feel like we're all right next to each other. It feels like I'm right next to Pastor right now as he spoke a while ago. Thank you, panelists. It's been it's my pleasure, my learning pleasure. I'm telling you, I've learned so much this evening that I didn't even realize. My cup full up this evening. and I am feeling the heat of the sun also because I'm at the bottom of the river all the time. All right. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. And look out for us again soon. In June, we were supposed to have an education summit in California. I think we're bringing it virtual, part of it virtually. And then also this team, the behavioral team and the education team, gonna get together and bring an education summit also here. So look for us in June again. But there are other classes. This is, you know, we do this pretty often. We invite our teachers to come on board in this format, and they learn professional development. They learn through training and all of that stuff on this platform. So we're thanking you, each and every one of you, for being here this evening. Thank everyone on Facebook for joining in, for all your questions and your comments. Everyone who's on Zoom, thank you for being here this evening, and thank you all for spending time with us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.